George knew he had put them back the day before. The failure of George Sodder's trucks to start was also considered. Unfortunately, one of George's son-in-laws told the Charleston Gazette-Mail in 2013 that he had come to believe that George and his sons might have, in their haste to start the trucks, flooded the engine. Both trucks flooding at the same time seems an unlikely explanation to me, even if in a panic. Some accounts have suggested that the wrong number phone call to the Sodder house that night might have also somehow been connected to the fire. But investigators later located the woman who had made the call, and she confirmed that it had been a wrong number on her part. Jenny, like any parent, was devastated by the loss of her children, so she continued to investigate their disappearance independently. She tried some of their own experiments, such as burning small piles of animal bones to see if they could be completely consumed, and finding that none ever were. Also comparing the results of a similar house fire that had killed a family of 7 as reported in a newspaper, finding out that all the skeletal remains that had been found. She even visited a local crematorium where she hoped to find out if the fire could have destroyed all the human bones. A recent study by Dr. Ramsey Amri, a researcher at Harvard Medical School, revealed bones do not exactly melt, it's more of a falling apart, as they were very solid. For an entire skeleton to be destroyed in a fire, the temperature is required to burn at more than 850 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 454 degrees Celsius, consistently for at least 2 hours. The Sodder family home was on fire for 45 minutes, as the wooden frame structure burned before them, fueled by the speed of the wind that night, which meant the property did not stand a chance. Considering how long it took for the house to collapse, there should, in theory, still be the skeletal remains of the 5 children in and amongst the debris. Yet, these were never recovered from the site. This then led Jenny to believe that her children might actually have been kidnapped. Speaking to a local newspaper, the Raleigh Register, more than 30 years after the fire, she said, and I quote,
"You can't tell me that my 5 children could burn up in a little old house like that and something wouldn't be left behind. No, I'll never believe it."
This then led to even more questions, such as, how could 5 children possibly be kidnapped together from their family home in the middle of the night, without waking either the parents or the other siblings? And also, surely by now, wouldn't someone have recognised the missing children and alerted the local authorities? After a short break, we will look at how Jenny was considered as a suspect and the continuing investigation into the case of the missing Sodder children.
This show is brought to you by courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. You can find them online or at 9 to 11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. They are open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms in the building. You can book a tour of the haunted rooms of the Paranormal Research Centre for just £3 per person. Over 16s only unless accompanied by an adult. Booking is essential at all times for a tour. Everyone who enters the haunted rooms does so knowing that they are extremely haunted and that paranormal activity could take place at any time during the tour. Some people may find certain areas within the building and particular objects quite scary and unnerving. The Haunted Antiques Gift and Craft Shop is open daily from Monday to Saturday from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Why not pay them a visit? The shop sells a wide variety of paranormal items, books, magazines and merchandise. Membership is available for only £25 to qualify for selective discounts on your purchases. And why not download their app for only $3.99? Available on iOS and Android to keep up to date with what's coming up at the centre.
For some time, Jenny herself was considered a suspect of wrongdoing. For a while there was a rumour going round that somebody had claimed $75,000, that's £61,000, worth of insurance on the children, but as Jenny soon pointed out, they didn't have any insurance. The police received many reports following the disappearance of the Sodder children. One witness even claimed she served them breakfast the morning after the fire. The woman was working at a hotel in Charleston, 50 miles west from the Sodder home. She reported,
"The children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction. They registered about midnight. I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the men appeared hostile and refused to allow me to talk to the children. One of the men looked at me in a hostile manner. He then turned around and began talking rapidly in Italian. Immediately, the whole party stopped talking to me. I sensed that I was being frozen out, and so I said nothing more. They left very early the next morning."
However, the police were unable to locate the group the witnesses had described. On one occasion, George saw a magazine photo of a group of young ballet dancers in New York City. One looked like his missing daughter Betty, so he drove all the way to the girls' school where his repeated demands to see the girl himself were refused, which is pretty understandable, really. I mean, would you, like a stranger going into your children's school, demand to see them face to face? There are many online sleuths who believe George's political beliefs are what motivated the fateful events that happened that night back in 1945. Although the Sodder family were well-respected, middle-class people, George had strong anti-Mussolini views and was against the fascist government in his Italian homeland. In Fayetteville, many of the other families were also Italian immigrants who disagreed strongly with George's views. Also, George was more than aware that the coal trucking business was under constant pressure from the Sicilian mafia. And a few weeks before the fire, the Sodder children had complained, a few times in fact, that a strange car was following them as they returned home from school. Many people strongly believe the disappearance of the children was connected to the mafia. Although it was the end of the official efforts to resolve the case, the Sodder family did not give up hope. They had flyers printed up with pictures of the children, offering a $5,000 reward, which was soon doubled up to $10,000 for any information that would have settled the case, even just for one child. In 1952, they put up a billboard at the site of where the house used to stand, and another along the US Route 60 near Ansted with the same information. It would in time become a landmark for traffic through Fayetteville on US Route 19, known today as State Route 16. Confusing, I know. George followed up many leads in person, travelling to all the areas the tips were coming from. A woman in St. Louis, Missouri, claimed Martha was being held in a convent. A bar patron in Texas claimed to have overheard 2 other people making incriminating statements about a fire that happened on Christmas Eve in West Virginia some years ago, but none of the tips proved to be significant. When George heard later that a relative of Jenny's living in Florida had children that looked very much like his own, the relative had to prove the children were his own before George was satisfied. Then, in 1967, George went to the Houston area to investigate another tip. A woman there had written to the family saying that Louis had revealed his identity to her one night after having too much to drink. The woman believed that he and Morris were both living in Texas somewhere. However, George and his son-in-law, Grover Paxton, were unable to speak with her. Police were able to help them find the two men she indicated, but they denied being the missing sons. Paxton said years later that those doubts about those denials lingered in George's mind for the rest of his life until he finally passed away. Louis Sodder was just 9 years old when he was last seen alive. The 22 years after his disappearance, his mother Jenny received a letter from Central City, Kentucky, with no return address. The letter also came with a picture that is believed to be of Louis. Actually, as a point of interest, if you type Louis Sodder possible picture into Google search on images, you can see the picture yourself. And in my opinion, when you compare it to the photo of him when he was a 9-year-old, there is a pretty good likeness. But I'll let you decide that for yourselves. There was a message on the back of the photo which read, Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, little boys, A90132 or 35. George and Jenny hired a private detective to investigate the photo and try to locate the sender. Unfortunately, the detective reached another dead end. George told the Charleston Gazette-Mail it was like hitting a brick wall. We couldn't go any further. Despite never being able to confirm if the photo really was Louis, the parents still had it framed and placed it above the fireplace, so strong was their belief. The disappearance of the Sodder children has remained unsolved for decades. Yet despite this becoming such a high-profile case, the FBI has never been involved. In 1947, George and Jenny made an appeal directly to J. Edgar Hoover, hoping he would help. They received the following personal letter from Hoover, which stated, although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of a local character and does not come within the investigative jurisdiction of this bureau. Another FBI agent said they were willing to help the family once they were granted permission from local authorities, but for some reason both the Fayetteville police and the fire department refused to give the go-ahead. It was yet another devastating blow for the Sodder family. Sadly, George Sodder died in 1969. Jenny and her surviving children continue to seek answers to their questions about the fate of their brother and 3 sisters. All except John, who never talked about the night of the fire except to say that the family should accept what happened and move on with their lives. Jenny stayed in the family home, putting up fencing around it and adding additional rooms. For the rest of her life she wore black in mourning and spent time tending the garden at the site of the former house. After Jenny's death in 1989, the family took the old, weathered, worn-out billboard down. The surviving Sodder children, joined by their own children, continue to keep the case in the public eye by investigating any new leads. They, along with older Fayetteville residents, have theorized that the Sicilian Mafia was trying to extort money from George and that the children may have been taken by someone in the know. Who knew about the planned arson attack, I'll get this right, and told the children they would be safe if they left the house, if they were possibly taken back to Italy. If the children had survived all those years and were aware that their parents and siblings had survived too, the family believes that they may have avoided contact to keep themselves from harm. Sylvia Sodder Paxton, the youngest of the surviving Sodder siblings, died in 2021. She was in the house on the night of the fire, which she said was her earliest memory. She also recalled that she was the last child to leave the family home. She and her father often stayed up late, talking about what might have happened. She experienced their grief for a long time. She believed that her siblings survived that night and assisted with efforts to find them and publicise the case. Sylvia's daughter said in 2006, that she promised her grandparents she wouldn't let the